You know what I really don't have any time for? Fishing simulators. You know what I love spending time on in video games? Fishing mini-games. You know what else I love? You probably do. I love the uncanny feeling of exploring a game world architectured by the past. I love to be haunted. Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia is a fishing mini-game, drawn out to the length of at least 3 or 4 hours worth of gameplay, providing you are quietly enjoying yourself. It is also a fishing minigame that takes place within a vaguely disturbed world space. Horror is really a side goal of Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia, but it doesn't always actually achieve horror. It achieves the uncanny, certainly. It achieves and replicates a sort of reality, but never quite obtains it, thereby creating the uncanny. But what does Lake Ophelia actually simulate? It seems to simulate the arbitrariness of a fish's brain for one, but it also simulates being alone and obtaining a kind of peace. Yet that peace is itself disrupted and subverted by expectation. The weird claymation graphics, the ugly-looking fish, the weird artifacts you can occasionally spot beneath the lake, even the horror tag on the store page primes you to expect something beneath the veneer of calm. And it is strange watching as you aim your fishing rod's arc and throw the hook out, only for your third-person viewpoint to transfer from that of the boy you are playing as to the hook itself. It is a weird, inspired use of perspective, particularly in a game that is already leaning heavily on the uncanny and on graphics inspired by the past. As a fish approaches the hook, you are functioning as the prey, but also as the predator. The moment the fish bites, the game is simple. Reel in when the fish isn't struggling. There are no extraneous meters or any immersion-breaking UI elements. You watch the tautness of the line and the way the fish itself wiggles to escape the hook it caught itself on. You also hear your line straining if you are pulling for too long, before it snaps. There are plenty of different fish to catch, and the boy has different reactions to each one, from a humble guppy to a grotesque piranha. Such additional flavour, especially his revulsion at certain fish, is welcome and appreciated. Sometimes the text has effects to emphasize his delight or disgust at a fish. You can tell exactly how he feels based on how the text wiggles. These are the kinds of things that give your character some actual, character, and gives the game as a whole a welcome personality that differentiates it from certain overly self-serious horror games. Not that such self-serious horror games are a bad time, they're actually not. But it's always nice to play a game that is happy to express emotions beyond despair. The map is small, delicately presented, and immersive. Many games opt to try for a larger scale, creating immersion out of a sheer variety of things you can see and do, but more often than not, scale hurts itself, and the game crumbles under the weight of its own ambition. More often, I think the way Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia does it is much better. I much prefer these days a smaller, more in-depth area to explore. It allows a player to form a personal connection and places you within the game world, and creates a kind of intimacy with the location itself as a character. If you've watched it, in my Silent Hill 2 Power of Southvale video, I cite scholar Doyle's Myers Co., who argues that intimacy is uncomfortable. It is much the case here. Lake Ophelia is something you seem to want to avoid becoming too intimate with. All too often, video games try for broad but shallow environments in order to compensate seemingly for other shortcomings within the game. Lake Ophelia itself is very apt. It is small, but deep. The more money you get from selling fish in the shallows, the better hooks and rods you can buy, allowing yourself to go deeper and deeper into the lake, and attracting weirder and weirder fish. In order to attract weirder fish, you also need to cook up fish in an old destroyed cabin. It is a haunting space. The game also includes a day-night cycle, a strangely understated part of the game that tells you, subconsciously, when it's time for the boy to head back to his tent and turn in for the night. You can spend as much time fishing as you like, but it is hard to fish in the dark, surprisingly. It's also nice to just relax to the feeling of the lake, to wander home as the sun falls. The game is almost perfectly presented, and it is very, very easy to play. The controls are intuitive and everything feels really nice to do. After catching every fish, it focuses on the boy. You have to rotate the camera back out to the water in a very deliberate action. Mysteries under Lake Ophelia, I think, could be considered by some to be something of an anti-climax of a horror game. The mystery is built up well, a haunting light emerging from the centre of the lake, an area you can't reach until you've done your damnedest to get good at fishing and sell to the weird man. Oh, the weird man. After finishing your first day out at the lake and returning at nightfall to your little camp, which sits beautifully just down a little slope, just out of sight of the lake itself, you spot, sitting by the flickering firelight, a figure sitting on one of the many formerly vacant logs. They were vacant when you woke up this morning anyway. It's a particularly eerie feeling, approaching a strange figure, playing as a young boy. It turns out he's something of a weird merchant who drops hints about the lake. He rumours about the strange light that you can see, and about the treasure that's supposed to be at the bottom of the lake, and asks for a cut. He also speaks about strange orange eyes that he thinks are probably just fireflies. But were they? Under ye sunken eyes, deep below the blue, where man cannot reach, that be where truth. And doesn't that just make you want to find out just what's down there? Yet the man also shows concern, wanting to make sure you're safe. You are pulled both ways, made paradoxically uncomfortable and a bit comfortable at the same time. You want to relax, and sometimes almost can, but oftentimes the game will do, show, or say something that makes relaxing, totally relaxing anyway, impossible. But despite these good moments of eeriness and uncomfortable behaviour from the game and the environment, the game's ending feels kind of abstractly cheap. It's exactly the kind of problem I've signalled many times before in both streams and other videos. Horror is often better when it's unexplained, but sometimes the opposite can become true. When things are just slightly too abstract, we lose any sense of weight that the story had. Sometimes a sense of alien terror is welcome, but I think, in the end, I might have just wanted a little more from Lake Ophelia. I can hardly be frightened if I don't really appreciate what's going on, but I can also be frightened the longer I think about what it was that happened. If something is truly abstract and terrifying, I will keep thinking on it, dwelling on the terror. It really depends on what you want from your horror. Personally, I think I ended up enjoying what it did, but simultaneously I also wanted it to go just a little step further. Spoilers follow here, and cease at the time displayed on screen. So the reveal in Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia almost feels a bit like anti-humour. You cast your fishing rod with its best upgrades into the eerie, glowing light. The hook, baited with the image of a maiden lost at sea, descends further and further down. A street lamp turns out to have been casting the eerie light somehow. How did it get there? But that's not the end. You descend further still. Darkness swallows you almost totally. A steel girder, bent and warped by forces unknown, rests even further down. Then, the game disappears. Something murky appears on the screen, and then a monstrous, hideous gulf of whole spotted flesh. You do what you've been trained to do in one of the game's cleverest moments. Reel it in. You reel the boy in, deeper and deeper into the monstrosity. I love this bit. It's so gross and terrifying, building and building, making the boy explicitly into food, just as we have been becoming ourselves with the perspective changed to the hook every time we reel in a fish. As we have been eaten by the fish, so is the boy eaten by the eldritch abomination. Then the game changes again. The boy, now in the wonderful claymation style that punctuates the loading and opening screens, witnesses the world, or something, deform. Punctuated by bursts of static, something threatens to happen before it all evaporates. I guess, sitting at the end, as the game says bye, I just wanted a little more. Who, or what, put any of this stuff here? What does this mean to the world at large? But that could also be a good thing. I'm left awake at night thinking about what it meant, where it's coming from, and what exactly it is I did by breaching the secret at the bottom of Lake Ophelia. So while it does feel like a bit of an anticlimax in a way, it could also, we could argue, be perfect horror. Something obscured by relative normalcy, then exposed to something truly unknowable, terrible, and malicious. But I recognize that not everyone enjoys these kinds of anticlimaxes, and want more explanation from their horror. I'm not of that persuasion per se, but even I admit it didn't feel quite as satisfying as it could have been. Jumping from a small location to the end of the world might be something we could metaphorize, but I was feeling left adrift by it, stranded on some foreign shore, and wondering why I should care about the world if I had just watched the boy, my anchor into this world, be eaten and go into the unknowable darkness. That was much more frightening than what I saw after that sequence. Food for thought. But why do I play these kinds of games anyway? It is not really for the conclusion, is it? It is for what the game makes me feel and think along the way. Standing atop the crest of a cliff and watching the tiny, granular-looking fish below is an experience that people deserve to have. Listening to the very occasional moments of music that move in and out of the game like mist through the pine trees is exquisite. Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia is, more than anything, a nice fishing simulator with elements of horror visible in the distance. It is also able to be played and appreciated by any horror or fishing fan that doesn't have much experience with the technology. The game, as you will have noticed, is framed by boxes, given a squashier resolution and older graphical style, as well as sounds and general interface. That feeling of odd familiarity haunts even players who have not experienced the technological framework of 1990s video games before. Because of an experienced neuroscientist, Philippe de Brigade identifies as nostalgia for a time you've never known, or, to take a phrase from John Koenig's Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, anemia. Anemia, Brigade says, is a kind of mental simulation of a generic time, which is itself generated, as I argue, by the technological callbacks and intermediality of certain video games, like Ophelia included. Without media-specific tools being reutilized and the framing of an older game, Lake Ophelia would not be able to produce the same haunting effect and the feeling of anemia. We are haunted by what we might have missed, and also haunted by what we might do in future, how things might change. In playing games like Lake Ophelia, we engage with the past and carry it with us in new ways into the future. We can re-engage with old, half-remembered technologies and keep them alive. We can understand how they comfort us, and how the distance created by time can unsettle us. So, should we cast our line into the dark depths of a random forest lake? Do we dare to pursue the darkness? I think that, especially on sale, Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia is worth the plunge. You should play. A short postscript. Thanks firstly and obviously to my patrons Frank Alunzi's, Future Cityscape and Blue Voices. Your support makes what I do possible. If you're listening and you're keen on joining, I would really appreciate it. Secondly, this is a video that really represents the first experiment of the channel with my video review style. I released it alongside a review for Night at the Gates of Hell, which is a more methodical and considered review, broken up into discrete chunks. I wrote that one really with a specific structure. I also plan to release a long-form video review where the game I choose unfolds throughout the video and where I reflect on it as we go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe, everyone.